Published 1801 EDT, the 4th of November 2017. Updated 1801 EDT, the 4th of November 2017. The Osbourne Ultimatum. Don't mess with my children, my husband or my X Factor family. Sharon Osbourne reveals why she's always spoiling for a fight. The X Factor has always thrived on high emotion. But when Simon Cowell was stretchered out of his house by paramedics after falling down the stairs in the middle of the night, the drama was arguably a little too real and rather too close to home. For Sharon Osbourne, a co-judge on the show, which the 58-year-old music mogul will miss this weekend, the incident is a mere blip in the theater of her life. "Oh, he's going to be fine," she says, waving her hands with breezy confidence. "He's dealing with it, he's in good hands, and we're all her." Lewis Walsh, Nicole Scherzinger and Cowell's last-minute stand-in, Alicia Dixon, going to make sure we put on a good show. Simon will be back next week. It's just one of those things. Sharon Osbourne is no stranger to feuds, the longest of which started after she fell out with her father when she defied him by dating the then-disgraced Ozzy. Sharon can be excused for being blasé. At 65, she has lived through the extremes of drug and alcohol addiction, domestic violence, breakdowns, and abuse, not to mention countless surgeries, affairs, a battle with cancer and the near-death of her husband, Ozzy, after a quad bike accident. A fall down the stairs. Cowell's low blood pressure was blamed as par for the course. "You just get back up again, isn't that the point?" she says in her high-pitched voice. "You got to show him, don't you? It's like when I started managing Ozzy and then dating him in 1979. People would say to me, what are you doing with him? He's a waste of space. He's out of control. He takes drugs. He's violent." And I just thought, well, I can deal with that. I understand that. And I know I can make it work. You just watch me. And I did. She admits it was never easy, but the couple morphed from a never-gonna-last Sid and Nancy into a rock-and-roll Darby and Joan, who this year celebrated their 35th wedding anniversary. The Osbourne family, Sharon and the man she believed in when no one else did, now have an estimated fortune of £167 million. "In the old days we were constantly fighting," she says. "We loved each other madly, but we were mad and were both incredibly violent, because we'd both been brought up around violence and didn't know any better. I used to think if you got angry it was absolutely okay to hit someone. It was worse when we were both drinking, but that wasn't an excuse for the violence. I would wake up with my two front teeth missing. She found them in the hallway and had them reinserted by a dentist, and we would be punching each other even when Ozzy was on stage performing. Had run into the wings to continue a fight, but Osbourne never saw herself as a battered wife, even after Ozzy's infamous attempt to strangle her. On that occasion she called the police but decided not to press charges. My father, the notorious music manager Don Arden, was violent. He ruled by fear. I'd been hit and witnessed other people being beaten since I was a kid. I was around violence, around people swearing and shouting, and to me this was just part of my normality." Sharon Osbourne with her father Don Arden in 2002, "As we grew up, I realized that this wasn't the normal way to behave. I saw other couples who weren't tearing each other's hair out, who didn't respond to problems by yelling and punching. Once we had children, I knew we had to stop or one of us would end up dead." Their eldest child, Amy, now 34, was born in 1983, and Ozzy checked himself into rehab the following year. It was about addressing the reasons behind that behavior through talking to people, growing up, and through therapy. That's how you get past it. Osbourne grew up in a ramshackle house in Brixton, alternately ignored or put to work by her dancer mom, Hope, and her father, who oversaw the careers of the Small Faces, ELO, Black Sabbath and The Move. "Sometimes there was money, sometimes there wasn't any," she says. "We all knew how to rob the electric meter when we needed some cash. You didn't expect a packed lunch for school. You didn't expect hugs. I didn't have a cuddly childhood." As a teenager, she began working for her father as a secretary, because in the 70s women in the record business were only ever secretaries. Small, plump and semi-feral, she defied her father when she fell in love with the wild Birmingham-born singer, who was sacked from Black Sabbath for his excessive drinking and drug-taking. She then took over managing Ozzy's career, which infuriated her father and prompted a 20-year family feud. Sharon and the man she believed in when no one else did now have an estimated fortune of £167 million. And his short, fat, hairy wife, as she describes herself, is now one of the highest-paid women on television on both sides of the Atlantic, fronting shows from The X Factor and America's Got Talent to The Talk and several BBC documentaries, including the recent Rock and Roll's Dodgiest Deals. Sharon and Ozzy with daughter Amy in the south of France in 1984. It is down to Osbourne that the Kardashians have so many millions, as it was she who came up with the idea for the first reality TV show of its kind with MTV's The Osbournes, which achieved the highest ratings in the channel's history. That was the beginning of it all, she nods. But the difference was we all had jobs, and now the reality show has become the job. On this year's X Factor, she is mentoring the girls Holly Tandy, 16, Grace Davies, 20, Rael Williams, 16, and her wild card, 22-year-old Filipino singer Elisa Bono-Obra. I didn't want the girls, she says with her usual honesty. I felt it was too much responsibility. They are so young. They are babies. They tear my heart out. But then I made the decision to get on board and to do it my way. This involves being a full-time tiger mother, checking that the girls are eating and sleeping properly and banning them from wearing anything overtly sexy. I'm not having any of that, says Osbourne. We've gone way too far down that route in the music business, and if it means having a fight over an outfit, I will win because something has to be done to stop this over-sexualization of young girls. I'm not having any of it. Mrs. O is a feminist. She loves Germaine Greer. She hates anyone who abuses young women. When her daughter Kelly appeared on the Jonathan Ross show at the age of 21 to promote her album, Ross pointed at her image on the cover and said, "That's not you. You're fat." Osbourne has not spoken to him to this day. He is the father of 3 girls, and at the time they had their own weight issues, she says. I couldn't believe what he was saying. But then look what he did to that poor Andrew Sachs. This is a tough industry, and it's very tough to see your kids go through it. But you do not treat people like that. This leads us on to the subject of Harvey Weinstein. Osbourne has total respect and total support for all the women who have come forward to say they were abused by the film mogul. She herself has had dealings with Weinstein and his brother, Bob, once promoting concerts in the 80s and then over a deal for the Osbournes. I never had a problem. She stops and shakes her head. And then part of you thinks, what's wrong with me, Harvey? He never did anything like that to me. But then you think about it, and you realize it's because of the type of woman you are. I've never faced any sexual abuse, but I think I've always given off a particular vibe that says don't mess with me. If a man had ever tried, he would be dead. No question, I believe her. In the 80s she was once accosted by a concert promoter who tried to get another $8,000 out of her after tickets for her husband's show had sold out within minutes. After a furious row, Osbourne headbutted him. I did, she says. Instinct took over. He was trying to screw me, screw my husband, and screw the band. That money was going to get us to our next gig. I was so furious. Rage took over. I wasn't going to let that little s get one over on me. Osbourne is no stranger to feuds, the longest of which started very close to home, after falling out with her father when she defied him by not only dating the then-disgraced Ozzy but by setting herself up as a rival manager. She didn't speak to him for 20 years, until they were reconciled and he even appeared in the Osbournes. It wasn't only her father she defied. She also took on other giants of the rock business. When I decided I was going to be a music manager and that I was going to make it work for Ozzy, no one believed in me or him. I remember my first meeting with Walter Yadnikoff, head of CBS Records in the 70s. I went to talk to him about Ozzy. He looked at me and said, "Why don't you just lose weight, F off out of here and go and have a baby?" That was the way men were allowed to speak to women then. I didn't break down. I didn't walk out crying. I'd been told to F off by my father pretty much every day of my life. So I just got angry and that fired me up to prove him wrong. When I tried to get Ozzy a spot on the Lollapalooza festival in 1996, they just laughed at me and that pushed me into setting up Ozfest, now the world's biggest heavy rock festival. I think if I'd had a softer childhood, I wouldn't have been tough enough to survive in this industry. I wouldn't be who I was without that fight. Osbourne's own style of mothering could not be more different to her childhood. She is fiercely protective of her 3 children, Amy, Kelly, 33, and Jack, 31. On the afternoon of Kelly's first date, she handed over a police file to the prospective suitor after having had him checked out. "Too right," she says. And despite what me and Ozzy have gone through, he always tells our daughter's boyfriends that if they ever lay a hand on them, he'll have them. Factor presenter Dermot O'Leary, with judges Sharon Osbourne, Simon Cowell, Nicole Scherzinger and Louis Walsh, they all speak to each other several times a day. When Sharon had colon cancer in 2002, Kelly refused to leave her side for months. When it was revealed last year that Ozzy had had a series of affairs, however, Sharon briefly left him, supported by their children. "I had to look at what he did and what I did," she says. "I spent a lot of time away working in 2016, and I wasn't there for him. If you want a marriage to work, you have to spend time together. That's what gets you through. We will never be a Volvo driving, dinner one-eatable sort of family, she says. Nothing is hidden from our kids and I don't regret that for a second. It has made us incredibly close. There is nothing we can't say to each other, nothing we can't do. And to be honest, I'm always very suspicious of those Volvo driving perfect families because in my experience they have the deepest, darkest secrets. Whereas, for all our extremes, we are an open book. Osbourne's style of mothering could not be more different to her own childhood. There is nothing you can't ask Osbourne. Ask how she squares being a feminist with her cosmetic procedures from gastric bands to facelifts, and she says, I do this for myself. I spent years looking like an Oompa Loompa. I'm not doing it to get a man. I'm doing it for me. Ask her what she thinks of the music industry today and she says there are no personalities anymore. You don't get these working class kids like Ozzy who give it hell. And I miss that. Ozzy will be 70 next year. I want him to retire and enjoy life. We've worked bloody hard and I want him to relax. But he's not having any of it. He wants to keep performing. Being on stage is the thing he loves most and I'd be the last person to take that away from him. It has been said that she too will retire next year. Not true, she says. I've slowed down but I'm not retiring. I think I have 5 more years in me. I'm signed up to do another year of X Factor, so no one's getting rid of me quite yet. The X Factor Live continues this Saturday on ITV from 8:20 p.m.